I felt that it was not going deep enough for me to find what I felt was suffocating me from the inside, what was blocking me from going further on this journey. And so the shaman, he looked at me and he said, okay, so you want to go deep? Let's go deep. When you live through those experiences, you cannot really negotiate with it anymore. Welcome to Reborn to Live, a podcast in which we explore new ways of living and being consciously together to discover the deeper aspects of life, of ourselves, and of the future of humanity, so that we can reborn into a new era, into our highest version of ourselves, and experience this wonderful journey of life fully. Welcome everyone to the very first episode of my own podcast, the Reborn to Live podcast. And I'm super excited to do this first solo episode because there's been so many people, so many of you who have asked to have one-on-one encounter with me where I share about my decision of leaving my circumstances and moving into an intentional community, and especially the process of my spiritual awakening that was extremely connected to that life choice. And so I feel that this is important to set the ground for this podcast before I start inviting guests who will enrich the podcast even more. So why the name Reborn to Live? Well, I think that we are living in very exciting times in humanity on this planet, and I think that it's very evident that there are two paths that are opening, that are unfolding. One that is not very positive, that is filled with a lot of fear, and another one that brings a lot of hope. A lot of people are awakening to what life really is, to starting to ask themselves the questions of who am I and what is life really about, and trying to create alternatives of how to live in connection with that and how to really express our uniqueness and our humanness. And I think that that is the era that we are transcending into. I'm really for that alternative, obviously. And I think that to be able to do that, there's so many structures that need to be taken down, or let's say to transcend, to be reborn, so that we can start live life fully, both as individuals but also as a collective. But also Reborn to Live is the title of one of my favorite books that has been written by the founder of the community that I live in, Falco Tarassaco, and it's a book of a lot of treasures. It's an esoteric book that has enriched my life so much and been able to deepen aspects, questions, and given answers. And every time I pick up that book, there's something new that I didn't even remember that I had read. So it's a book that continues to enrich my life and the life of so many others. And I also think that it's really helpful on this journey, in this time of transcendence into a new way of living on this planet and into a new way of expressing who we are and our relationship to each other, to ourselves, and to the planet itself. And I'm really excited to share my story today because I think that many people are going through similar things, have gone through similar things, and I think it can be very helpful to connect to the hearts of each other and to have a space where this kind of knowledge can be shared. Since childhood, I knew that I wanted to contribute in some way to society. There was a lot of things that I didn't understand, why certain things were looking at a certain way, and I had a lot of sadness as a child, seeing certain structures, seeing a lot of suffering and pain, and that in my teenager years, it expressed itself as an interest in politics, in philosophy, and so on. But I was never really interested in matters of spirituality and religion. I think that the reason for that was that I recognized religion as one of the institutions that had caused a lot of suffering. And so I really felt that I wanted to distance myself as much as possible from something that used belief and hope of people in order to have a political agenda. And so I was very critical to religion, and I put that together a lot with spirituality in general. I really didn't see the difference between the two. So when I had my spiritual awakening, which started in December of 2012, which is funny now because after all of that turbulence, then I started reading, and the 2012, the December, the ending of the Mayan calendar, and the end of the world, and so on. And I realized that probably that was really the end of an era. At least it was for me in my life, and as I've read for many people, and it was the beginning of an era where many people actually started to awaken to something else, started to awaken to who they were, and started to have this kind of spiritual awakenings. And so for sure that was a powerful time. And at this moment in my life, I had decided to move to Berlin because I was tired of my hometown of Stockholm. I thought it was very boring, it stood still, there was no dynamics, there was no things, and so I wanted to move to a place where there would be people who were thinking in new ways. So I was always a person who wanted to see more of the world, who wanted to be surrounded by people and in situations where there was a new way of thinking, open minds, creativity, art, and so on. And so I had moved to Berlin when I started to painting. I wanted to try out life as an artist. I was studying philosophy. But all of that was stopped or put to a pause or a halt because of my very strong spiritual awakening that was very shocking for me. It was really like having someone hit you in the head with something that was really not understandable for me at the time. And as I was a non-believer of anything, I was resisting a lot, and I was really thinking that I was going crazy. And so experiences that one would call paranormal experiences, that then there are so many different words for this now. I don't know, the third eye opening, kundalini awakening, or all of these things that I read about afterwards. But in that moment, I was just navigating in something that I had no idea what it was, and I was resisting a lot. I was constantly afraid, and I had no one really to speak to about these things, because I heard myself and how I was sounding like a crazy person. I think that living in Berlin for me at this time was really a protection, in a sense that if I would have been in Stockholm, people that I know, my friends, my family, would probably have tried to bring me to a psychiatrist or a psych home or something like that, which probably would have blocked me to really live this experience that was so important for my life. And even though it was filled with a lot of fear of seeing things, of feeling things, of experiencing things, when I finally surrendered to that, because at a certain point when you live these kind of experiences, you cannot fight anymore. You have to make a decision to just allow whatever is coming through, and just live it. Just stop questioning it and just live it. It was a period that lasted for 3 months of a roller coaster experience, where I felt that I lived lifetimes in those 3 months. And I felt afraid, and I felt connected to the whole universe. I felt divine presences, not so divine presences. It was really a turmoil. But at the same time, when you live through those experiences, you cannot really negotiate with it anymore. I think that after those 3 months, I entered into a deep identity crisis, because everything that I had hoped for and looked for in the future, who I thought I was, what I thought the world was, what I wanted my role to be in the world, I realized that it was all based on something that was not real, and what I had experienced was much more real than the things that I had lived in my life so far. And that really put me into a crisis, because there was the feeling of like, now what? Now what should I do with my life, and where should I look? Where should I go? And there was really difficult to make sense of anything in that moment. I think that the power of these experiences and what they left was really a sense of knowing. It was not a sense of believing or not believing. It was that felt like very basic at this point, because when you really live through something, when you really experience through something, then you know it. You cannot say that you believe or you don't believe. It was true, it was not true. It was real for me. And I knew that reality was so much more than what I had thought. And I felt almost a sense of actually going back to my childhood where I knew certain things, but then through cultural and educational and family conditionings, I forgot. And so I had this huge sense also of refinding parts of myself that I realized that I had put in the shadow. And after this period, I realized that I really needed to seek out people, circumstances that could help me navigate what had happened and navigate also this new timeline that I was finding myself on. I couldn't just go back home to Sweden or continue living in Berlin pretending that nothing had happened. And so that part of, let's say, my identity crisis, it turned into a journey of a couple of years where I went to different places around the world, different spiritual cultures, to try to deepen what had happened and try to understand, trying to find some kind of truth. And I went through plant diet retreats in the jungle with ayahuasca and other master plants, and I went to the Himalayas in meditation retreats, sitting and dwelling very deep within myself. And this journey, it went on until the last time I went to the jungle. And this was a period where I had started to feel that there was something in me that I was not able to reach. There was something that was not healthy within me, that was sick within me. It almost felt like something that I needed to get out, something that was suffocating me from the inside, and I had no idea what it even was. I tend to be, and have always been, a very happy person, and so I couldn't understand what it was that felt so dark and heavy inside of me. And so when I was in this last retreat in the jungle, I told the shaman that I really wanted to go deep. I wanted to find this. Even in my ayahuasca ceremony, it was all about the beauty and the angels and the things, and, you know, very beautiful ceremonies. But I felt that it was not going deep enough, not deep enough for me to find what I felt was suffocating me from the inside, what was blocking me from going further on this journey. And so the shaman, he looked at me and he said, "Okay, so you want to go deep? Let's go deep." And we had a private ceremony, which was probably one of the most painful ceremonies, painful situations I found myself in my life. It was a complete losing myself at a certain point. And I was traveling through this kind of darkness within me in the shape of a snake that was causing me a lot of nausea. For anyone who has ever done any the ayahuasca or anything similar, you know, the uncomfortable feeling that you can have of really losing yourself in that. But I tried to remain in control and just navigating through these tunnels and like navigating through that while vomiting, and, you know, so that was really my intention of going really deep and finding the answer to what was inside of me. Really helped me to like take away the layers, which was represented by this seeking in this tunnel as this kind of snake-like creature, and then vomiting, cleaning, and continuing. A very, very painful and frustrating journey, but at the end of that, I found myself in front of a door, and I realized that this was the door to the deepest room inside of my being. And as I opened the door, I entered a little pitch black, completely dark room. And in the corner of that room, there was this little black creatures with all the spines on the back. And it was in a really creepy position in the corner of this room. And it was looking at me from over the shoulder, over this spiny back. And I realized that this disgusting creature represented my deepest fear, which was not being loved for who I am. And I think that that's a fear that so many people have deep inside of them. And I felt so angry, and I felt so much hatred towards this creature, because I realized that it was the this was the reason for all the suffering, for all the mask that I put on myself, for all the things that I did just to be likable, for all the pain that I had experienced in my life came from this being. And I felt so much anger and so much hatred until in that moment of hatred, something completely changed. And I realized that that being is not separated from me. It's not that being, that fear that has caused me all that suffering. That is something that is a part of me. That is me. And in that moment, I felt so much love towards that being, towards myself, towards that disgusting creature in the corner. And I told it that it doesn't matter how disgusting you are, how creepy you are, how strange, weird you are, and it doesn't matter if no one loves you, because I will love you. I will love you so much that you will not have the need anymore to find love outside of yourself. I will be the one for you. And in that moment, that disgusting black creature it was free. It just dissolved and closed its eyes in the same way as a baby falls asleep safely in the arms of a mother. And I just felt free. For the first time, for as long as I can remember, I felt that I could breathe again. And that experience, that healing, really changed me. And I realized that my journey of seeking was over. I realized that the universe is infinite and we can seek for eternity. But the power that lied within me and the power that we have as human beings is really that of creating, and of creating the things that we want to see in the world, of creating and unfolding and understanding who we are in each moment. And that part of the journey is what is exciting. That is what we're here to do. And so I left the jungle with a closed chapter in my life. But coming back to Sweden, to my home city, to my home country, I felt that even though I had healed that within myself, even though I've had that understanding of wanting to create, I felt I became much more grounded within myself. But with all the things that I tried to do in Sweden, I constantly felt that I was being blocked, that I was having doors shut in my face, that it was a constant struggle to be in a context in which you feel that you have outgrown, but still being surrounded by people and being in situations where I was constantly being pushed back into that little box. And so very quickly, actually, I realized that I couldn't stay in that if I wanted to continue on this journey, if I wanted to continue to grow, and if I wanted to create and unfold. I couldn't stay in that, because we are so dependent on our environment, and we can fight, but I realized that I didn't want to fight my environment. I didn't care to prove anything to anyone. I just wanted to create something that felt important in this life, important for this humanity. And I wanted to do that with others. I wanted to do that being in love with my life every day, being in love with myself every day, and not in this space that was trying to put me down constantly. And that was not the fault of the people around me. That was not the fault of the circumstances. It was just that was not on the right frequency for me anymore. And it was impossible for me to stay in that. I felt alien in that. And so understanding that I wanted a context that could help me bloom, and which I could find and use my talents for the good and for others, find it and then give it away, I needed to find a context that resonated with me. And that's when I started to seeking out intentional communities, because I had already been interested in the movement of intentional communities, of living together with other people who share a soul mission with you, going back to a life of a tribe, sharing with other people, living together with other people, sharing the lands, going back to having a real connection with the territory that you're living on, growing your own food. There was a lot of things that really spoke to me, that really attracted me. And at the same time, I also wanted something that had a spiritual depth, because having gone through what I had gone through the years before, again, if I would find myself in a context with people who didn't have that kind of knowledge, then I would find myself alone again. And so I embarked on this journey, and Damanhur was the first community that I arrived to, because it was the only community that was open in winter time, and it was February, and I really wanted to leave Sweden because it was cold, it was dark. It's very dark in Sweden during the winters, and I felt like I need some light, I need to breathe again. And so I was interested in going to south of Europe, because I was super poor in this moment. I had 800 euros on my bank account. And so I couldn't take a flight to the other side of the world, because that would be the flight ticket only, if that even was enough. And so I decided, okay, European trip is the easiest, is what I can afford in this moment. And Damanhur was the only community, intentional community in Europe that was open in wintertime for visits. And so I signed up for this program that was a 3-month program to live as a citizen and understand what life was in Damanhur, knowing that I would not have been able to pay all those 3 months, but I thought that I would see what happened along the way. And I was blessed, I think, to come to this place, because the next step of my journey was really confronting my relationship to freedom. And this is very interesting, because freedom has been, I think, and still is for me, the highest virtue in life. It is the thing that I put the most value on. And I've always sought freedom. That has been the most important thing in my life since I was a little child, from being able to do things myself, being able to experience things, being free from any kind of, from anything. Freedom has always been the most important concept in my life. But I realized as I came here that my concept of freedom was so conditioned again by the way that the concept of freedom is sold in our Western society, which is mainly, going around, being able to do whatever you want, not to depend on anyone, and just, actually just going with the flow and no ties. And that is such a superficial way to look at freedom. But I was very caught up in that. And so when I arrived here, I was stood in front of a choice in my life where I needed to choose if I wanted to stay, or if I wanted to, follow what I had done already years before, just going from one place to another. And that was really, really scary for me, because I recognized theoretically, but I didn't feel that I was really ready to accept and to understand what that truly meant, was that I saw that staying and dedicating your life to something that you feel is important, that you feel that resonates to your heart, anyways, means taking responsibility. And for me, responsibility was the opposite of freedom. I had this idea that when you need to take responsibility, then you're not free at all, which is so funny, because being here and deepening my journey, I realized the complete opposite, that responsibility, discipline, and consistency is the only tools, it's the only way that to arrive really to a true sense of freedom. Because we are so conditioned by our family background, by our culture that we grew up in, by our educational system, which could be a complete episode only by itself. I am a child of a school wound that I think that so many other people are. And we are so conditioned to think that life is in a certain way and that freedom is in a certain way that we don't really take free choices. Like, I realized when I had my spiritual awakening that all the things that I wanted in my life, all the choices that I made, for everything, all the choices, that could be the choices of a partner, that could be the choices of what clothes to wear, which travel to go on, what food to eat, whatever it was, I was conditioned into thinking that that was the right choice for me. And I was constantly in this endless flow of, this is the right thing to do, this is the path that you should take, this is what success means, this is what freedom means, this is what... And only when I woke up from that, I realized that I could actually, like, if I had a free thought for once, what would that really look like? And the journey of liberating ourselves from those conditionings, that is a long journey. It's not something that happens overnight. And so we need to take responsibility for everything that we do, for what we think, for what we feel, for how we behave, for how we show up in a room. Only when we take that kind of responsibility, we take the full responsibility for how our life should play out, only then we can experience true freedom. And we can do that through discipline. Discipline is only seeing what is actually the best for us and having a discipline to work towards those goals, because it's so easy to get lazy, to go back to what we are used to, but what we are used to is really based on our cultural conditioning. And so pushing ourselves to go through that discipline, because it gratifies us, it allows us to grow, it allows us to arrive to those results that we want to, that's the only way. And doing so with consistency, of course, is the thing that will have us arrive to the result that we want. And that journey is something that I'm so grateful for in Damanhur, for that groundedness, that practical dreaming that we say in my community, because it really allowed me to change the way that I look at life. And it has taken a couple of years to fully accept and to fully integrate what that really means. But it is slowly changing my life. And my concept of freedom has completely changed. Completely. Also, on a deeper level, we are all connected and we are all one. So thinking that freedom is going around doing whatever you want, not having responsibility, is really a trap in a sense, because we are not only responsible for ourselves and our life. We have a responsibility to create a more loving world, to create a world that is in harmony, to create a just world, to create a world where we can thrive and where there is harmony between all relationships, between humans, between animals, between plants. We are all connected and we have a responsibility for this journey, not only as individuals and as human beings, but being a part of this planet, we also have the responsibility for how that plays out. We cannot obtain freedom alone, and we cannot obtain freedom if we don't internalize the fact of being part of something much bigger than ourselves, of being the planet, of being humanity. And so this is my journey at this moment, to continue to work on these aspects every day and to really enjoy the journey of doing so, enjoying the journey of finding myself every day and finding myself through mirroring myself in the people around me, in the environment around me, and finding the quirks of what is inside of me, of playing with the people in my life that I love, riding this crazy wave in this crazy life with people who are doing the same thing, and also serving, and in that serving myself, serving my community, and serving people by opening a discussion about these things on my channels. And I'm not where I want to be yet. I haven't arrived to a destination. Probably there's not even a destination, but understanding that life is every moment unfolding and being happy wherever we are, because that is the most important moment in my life, is exactly where I am in this moment now, and enjoying that really gives me a lot of joy. That doesn't mean that there are no challenges, but when that's the awareness of your everyday, even the challenges becomes gratifying. Even the challenges become something that you ride with joy. So this is my story. This is where I'm at in this moment in my life. This is why I'm launching this podcast. This is my way to grow, helping to grow others, and sharing from my heart who I am. And in that also understanding who I am and what is unfolding for me in every moment and together with you. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. Thank you for listening, and I see you soon.